Captain Megan Nguyen, no, you know I mess that up every time. When Captain Megan is a licensed clinical social worker currently serving as the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention and Treatment Program Manager for the 374th Medical Group, Yokota Air Force Base, Japan. She directs the ADAPTS operations and clinical oversight of the program to include evaluating military members, their families, and the government workers on drug and alcohol use disorders. She evaluates and determines the appropriate level of each person's care. Captain Megan enlisted in the Air Force in November 2009 and completed the medical material apprentice technical school, graduating in May 2010. She was first stationed at the 9/11 Air Wing in Pittsburgh, where she was selected for the Health Promotion Scholarship in 2012. She completed her bachelor's and master's degree at the University of Pittsburgh, and then she commissioned as a U.S. Air Force officer in 2012. She was on reserve student status until 2014 while completing her master's degree in social work. She completed commissioned officer training in June 2014 at Maxwell Air Force Base. Her first duty station was Shaw Air Force Base in Sumter, South Carolina, in which she held a position as the Family Advocacy Officer. She then served as the Family Advocacy Officer and the Mental Health Officer in charge at Anderson Air Force Base, Guam. Since 2019, she has been stationed at Yokota Air Force Base and will be departing in August 2021. In 2012, Megan graduated from the University of Pittsburgh with a Bachelor's of Arts in Criminology, Police Administration, and Bachelor's of Science in Natural Science, dual degree, y'all remember that. And then in 2014, she completed her Master's of Social Work and then became a licensed clinical social work, licensed as a clinical social work person. Some of her major awards and decorations are the Air Force Commendation Medal, the Air Force Reserve Meritorious Service Medal, National Defense Service Medal, and Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. So welcome, welcome. What is not in here is Megan is my school to career daughter. And when I talk about my kids, Megan is one of them. She's been part of School to Careers family since 2004. Wait, you're muted. Hold on.
When it was called Breach Menders.
When it was
on the top of Robinson and Terrace, okay?
Exactly. So her and Catrice are the longest members of School to Career. And welcome, thank you. And Megan, again, is coming to us today from Japan, where it is actually our tomorrow at, is it 6 o'clock or 7?
6:13 in the morning.
6 o'clock in the morning. So thank you, Megan. It is all yours.
Thank you, Miss Carla. I promise y'all I'm not that old. I really did all that at like 12, okay? So, but no, I definitely feel like I am one of the oldest members. When I was looking at that poster, I was like, why does everybody have a 1 in front of their year that they graduated? Mine says 07. So I have done a lot since I've been in the program. I will say that the program is an amazing program and it really does set you up for success. So I personally like the personal interaction that I had. It was definitely a second home for me. If I wasn't at school, if I wasn't at one of the internships jobs, I was definitely at the building, sitting there doing homework or just talking with people. You know, I've made a lot of really good friends and all of us are pretty successful. And at least, even if they didn't go to college, I promise you every one of them can get a job. They might have multiple jobs, but they are able to get a job and they definitely teach that. And there's a big difference between, again, a career and a job. And I'm sure you guys have gone over that. I didn't really understand that at that point until I started going to college and kind of seeing the differences in what those looked like in the different paths. So my education is a little intense, but it wasn't easy for sure. But I do want this to be interactive. So I'll ask you guys questions. just because I just don't want me being up here talking. So you don't have to save all your questions to the end. If you have questions as I'm going along, just chime in at any time. But going from high school, I was Pittsburgh public school all the way through, right? So I went to East Hills Elementary, Frick International Studies, and then Shenley High School. And yeah, I did pretty well. I never seen too bad of grades. I think I got a D in bio once, but it was because I was just cutting up and I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. But I came out of high school with a 3.8, you know what I mean? And it was pretty solid. Pitt main campus did not accept me with a 3.8. So that was like one of those first, it wasn't a failure. I still went to Pitt Greensburg, but it was definitely one of those things where I'm like, oh, excuse me, like I've been at the top of my class. Like, what do you mean I can't go to the main campus? But it was one of those hits that, you know, you just have to take and roll with it. And I'll tell you that through all my successes, I've also had a lot of failures. Obviously, people don't blast out their failures. You don't put your failures on your bio. But at the same time, know that those will happen. I know a big thing that a couple people had talked about previously, because I've seen a little bit of the other presentations, is high school and college are very different, right? In high school, not all the time, and I guess it's a little different now being virtual. The teachers will kind of check on you and kind of see what you're doing and calling your parents or, you know, updating you on if you're not turning stuff in. In college, I won't say none of them care, but regardless, and this sounds crazy, but they're still getting paid regardless. If you go to class, if you don't go to class, if you pass or fail, those professors are still getting paid. And they're just doing their job. So you can get a couple that are like, you know, they'll really look out for you if you go to them, but you have to go to them. Most times they're not going to reach out to you and say like, hey, you know, I think you need to do this. You know, if you're failing a paper or failing something, go to that teacher and let them know like, hey, I'm really trying. I don't know what's wrong, but I need help on this, right? My education turned a little differently because I went into the military. So I'll tell you, that's another one of my failures that I came out of. So versus calling them failures, they're learning opportunities, right? So my second year of college, doing some things I wasn't supposed to be doing, not going to class, and didn't do so great. I'll put it that way. Got on academic probation. I knew my father was going to not be happy. My father worked at the University of Pittsburgh, so I went for free. So for me, like applying to colleges, I only applied to one. And that was because that's the only one that my father was going to let me go to because it was free. So that's a big thing. If you can get a free scholarship, if you can get things that'll help pay for it, because college is not cheap, you know what I mean? So I had to go to Pitt, regardless if it was a branch campus, if it was the main campus, like I was going to Pitt because it was free and it was good education. So my second semester, I won't say I failed out. I'll just say that my GPA was not good enough and I got on academic probation. And I freaked out because I was like, oh man, like my dad's going to kill me. Like I'm not even going to show him these grades. And that's a good thing in college. Don't abuse it. Your parents don't see your grades. They don't have access to your grades. You can, you know, to be kind of, I'm not telling you to weasel out of it, but I was telling my dad, like, no, the grades didn't come in yet. I don't know what's going on. The teachers are taking their time. In that time, I actually signed up to go to the military because I was like, I got to figure this out. And I guess it was kind of like a running strategy. Like, I got to do something. So I ended up joining the military as an enlisted member. I'm not sure. Do you guys know what enlisted versus officer is? Anybody? Anybody?
No.
I'll start calling you guys out. One person said no.
Is enlisted when you can still be home and if they need you, they call you?
No, that's a reservist. So I was a reservist, yeah. So enlisted versus officer. So if you think about it at like a regular job, like supervisors versus workers. So most times, and you can still be a supervisor as enlisted, but most times officers have their degree and they specifically commission. So there's kind of like a stepping stone. So all officers are above enlisted members. I was first enlisted. So when I went in, I was enlisted, I was little baby worker bee. You know what I mean? Like I did what they told me, did this and this. So if you think about it, so most people know, like, when people salute, right? And you're just like, oh yeah, all military members salute each other. No. All enlisted will salute officers because it's just a matter of respect. It's like a respectful way to say hello, if you want to say. And then any officer that is above me, so right now I'm an 03, which is a captain. I will salute anybody above me as an 04, 05, 06, which would be like major, lieutenant colonel. It's just other ranks. So I initially came in as enlisted because I didn't have my degree yet. I was still in college, and you have to have a degree to be a officer. So I went through school. I did become a reservist, so I did the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, but it definitely put me on a better path. It gave me a little bit more structure. It gave me like, these are the things that you need to do, put your priorities together and figure it out. So then I finished both my bachelor's at Pitt. And as I was going into my master's program, a recruiter, which if anybody ever talks to a recruiter, please come and talk to me first before you do not sign any paperwork. Okay, don't sign any of their paperwork. They will lie to you every single time. I've had 3 recruiters, they've lied to me all 3 times. Just call me, shoot me a text, whatever. Talk to me before you sign any paperwork with the military, because they're liars. But so a recruiter came and they're like, hey, would you like to be an officer? So in an enlisted person's mind, typically when you hear officer, you hear bigger paycheck, because essentially that is a big part of it. And I was like, absolutely, I want to be an officer. So then I became an officer in the U.S. military as a military mental health provider, as a social worker. So I deal with a lot of people are like, oh, do you do PTSD? Do you work with, this, that, and the other? There is a lot of PTSD, not as much as portrayed, but they do, I do see depression, adjustment disorder, different things like that overall. In the military, well, I'll speak for the Air Force specifically. In the Air Force, they do want you to continue being educated. So a lot of people will run away to the military thinking like, oh, I'm done with education. No, you're not. On all of our evaluations every year, it's just kind of like a report on like how you did over the last year at work, which you'll see in regular jobs as well. It's just like work performance. They will ask you specifically in the Air Force, what education did you have this year? Even if you have your degree, they'll say, okay, what did you do to enhance your education? Even if you have a doctorate, like were you going to seminars? Were you learning more things? So they continue to teach you. And then they also continue to teach you on a military level. So if you look in some of the education, you'll see like officer training school, squadron officer school, and that's to teach you to essentially be a leader, to teach you how to work with troops overall. You do like progressive discipline, different things like that, but it's essentially teaching you how to be a better supervisor overall. Are you saying some police officers have PTSD? They treat their meds. Some police officers do have PTSD, but truthfully, anybody can have PTSD. It's not just a military thing. It's not just because PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And that is, I don't know if everybody's seen the question. I'm not like randomly going off the cuff, but the question was, let me see, sorry. It says from Danielle, so are you saying that some police officers have PTSD and they treat their mental state? So yeah, you absolutely can have PTSD and be treated for a mental state. I'm actually trained in multiple PTSD therapies. There's one called EMDR, there's cognitive processing therapy, there's prolonged exposure. There's a couple of them that you have to be specifically trained in to do. But yeah, anybody can have PTSD. When I was, I don't have this on here, I don't know where it went, but I did internships, and I had an internship at the Juvenile Detention Center. You guys know where Schumann's at? Is Schumann still there? Okay, I'm like, Schumann's still there. All right, so I did one there, and there were a lot of kids that had PTSD from a lot of like just trauma that they had in their lifetime. The two most common that is taught to treat is sexual trauma and combat exposure. But you see a lot of it in inner cities as well, where people are being shot, people are seeing their friends being killed or other people being killed, period. Just different things that have happened to them, people being abused as children. All of that is a type of trauma that can be addressed and worked with. So it's not like one and done, you have it and you always have it. It's just like a broken leg or, you know, depression. You can work through those things and kind of come out on top. So, all right, career path, you guys can kind of look down through it. I'm not going to read it all out. But
yeah,
I do.
a lot of career experience.
Yeah, yes,
Work
ma'am.
experience.
So what I put on there, so what I tell people when you're doing resumes and stuff like that, like put things that matter to that specific job. So if I was applying for a job right now, I would not put Rita's Italian Ice on there, okay? I wouldn't put, you know, Brightside Academy, which was a summer camp that I worked at. But I just wanted to show you guys, like, I was a regular, you know, like I have regular jobs. I've just am far enough in my career that I no longer have to work at certain places. Rita's Italian Ice was by far my funnest job outside of school to career. That's more like a home place for me. I don't really see it as like a job because I've done so much stuff in it, but it's like a job. Rita's Italian Ice, when it first opened down in Oakland, was super fun. You get to serve ice cream, you got to eat ice cream, you got to like people watch down in Oakland as they're walking by. It was a lot of fun. But some of those things, once you get a little older and you're into your career, they don't care that you worked at Rita's, you know what I mean? Sometimes I'll put some internships that matter. Like I probably wouldn't put the Boys and Girls Club on there, but that was an awesome experience as well. I typically do put juvenile Schumann on there just to let them know that I worked in that type of system, which I absolutely loved as well. Any questions about anything that I've specifically done that does, because some of it is military focused. So any questions about anything on like the career path or things that I've done in the past, things that you should or shouldn't put on resumes?
Did you use this resume? Do you need a resume for your type of work?
Yes and no. You should always update your resume, but to specifically be in the military, they won't ask you for a resume. They will ask you for a bio once you become an officer. But no, but I will tell you that a lot of military members don't have resumes, and that's a huge problem because what we tell people is everybody gets out of the military, everybody. Whether you retire out, whether you just get out, whether you get kicked out, a lot of people get kicked out, or whether you know what I mean, for whatever reason, some people don't know this, but if you get pregnant as a woman, you have an option to leave the military. And not fulfill your contract. So there are certain things like that, but then they're not prepared, you know what I mean, when they come into the civilian sector to get a job, because they're like, oh, what did you do? And you're like, oh, you know, I worked on planes. People don't know. They're like, okay, I loaded bombs on planes. That doesn't transfer very well into the civilian sector. So we have certain people that can work with military members to kind of civilianize their experiences. So for instance, like this is a little extreme, but this is something that we usually use. So an infantry person is what most people think of when they think military. They're on the front lines, you know, they're busting in doors, they're going into Afghanistan. How do you put that on a civilian resume, right? You're like, yeah, I went to Afghanistan and I was like shooting and like acquiring buildings, and you're like, what? Like, so they work it into like a police aspect, you know what I mean? And we talk about leadership and stuff like that, because a lot of military terms don't make sense in the civilian sector. So you do not need to have a resume to get into the military, but you should be updating your resume for whenever that time is that you get out, whenever that is, whether it's 3 years, 4 years, 20 years, 30 years, that's a long time to be in the military. But people do it. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. And like another thing, a lot of people that like work that go to the military that were in the military, it's like a lot of them are like in the streets and like, not to be like harsh, but like crack kids and stuff like that. Like they're not like it's like they fight for, like, they think they're doing something good, but like when they fight for our country, it's like their life doesn't really fulfill what they think they're supposed to do. That happens to a lot of people. Do you know people that, like, that's happened to?
So yes and no. Obama actually had a huge campaign going to get veterans off the streets. Like, that was one of his goals when he was in office. So a big thing, the people that you're typically thinking about, so they're different, for lack of better terms, versions of veterans, right? So you have most of World War II veterans are like gone, if you want to say. They're not all gone, but like for the most part, they're very minimal. You have Desert Storm, and then you have Iraq and Afghanistan. We call them OEF and OIF. Operation Iraq Freedom, Operation OEF, OIF. Anyways, they're in Afghanistan. So those were the ones that like hit out right after 9/11, right? And a lot of them have different war experiences, but and then Vietnam, obviously. So the ones that you're specifically speaking of typically are from the Vietnam era. And that's a very bad error, if you want to say, because they were not welcomed back home from war gracefully, because a lot of people didn't think we should have been at war. Aside from the politics, a lot of the veterans came back and people were literally spitting on them, telling them that they're baby killers, just all these bad things, you know what I mean? So they didn't want to reach out for help. They didn't want anything to do with anybody. And then obviously they've seen a lot of horrific things. So a lot of them do have PTSD. So they kind of pushed away from the system overall. And they were into a lot of drugs because they were doing some drugs in the military overseas. And they struggled with that. So when I was I actually interned at the VA, there were significant difference between the people that were in Vietnam and the people that were in Iraq and Afghanistan. And you could tell by just their demeanors, you know what I mean? So the people that were in Iraq and Afghanistan, typically they were welcome to help. A lot of the veterans that were from Vietnam were not welcome to help. They're just like, give me the certain things that I need and I'm out of here. So do some of them end up on the street? Yes. Do they absolutely have to be on the street? No, because there are many programs. I will say there's this one guy, he was so interesting to me because I never understood, but he loved being homeless, right? So that sounds crazy to you, right? You're like, why would you want to be homeless? He's like, it's because I'm free and nobody can hold me down to one place. And that's just, he kind of like a nomad. He just like, he got his check on the 1st and the 15th and he would blow it on whatever he wanted. And he was just happy to do that.
I heard a lot of people say they like being homeless, like on videos and stuff. I heard that.
Mm-hmm. So there are different things. Some people have mental health issues that, you know what I mean, they don't want people telling them what to do, and then some people just want to be free is what they'll say. They don't want to be bogged down by society. So depending on what that person is homeless for, really depends on where they're at, what they're doing, how they're, you know what I mean, managing in life. But I will say for veterans, typically it is a choice to be homeless because there are so many programs, there's so many different things that they can do to kind of come out of that. So drugs is a big thing, I'll tell you that for sure. So a lot of times when they go to the VA, a lot of times they'll just be medicated. And some of that medication kind of leads down a road of something else, right? So you're getting regular prescription drugs to numb some pain, and then that's not working enough. And you go to harder drugs, you know what I mean? So I know when I was in the VA, there was a lot of heroin. There was a lot of heroin actually coming through Pittsburgh because it was coming up from the South. There was a heroin, it was called like Get High or Die Trying. And I was like, what? Like, why would you ever take that? And literally people were dying because it was so strong. And it was just a crazy time, you know what I mean? And what a lot of people forget is that like veterans are still people. We're still, you know what I mean? Like, they try to put us at like this higher pedestal because, you know, the things that we do, but essentially they are still people and they still make mistakes like everybody else. They can still fall into drugs. They can still fall into, you know, crime and different things. And some people get kicked out for those things as well. So where all have I been? Do you want to know places that I've traveled with this perspective broadening, or do you want to know places that I've worked? So we're obviously Pittsburgh, and then I went to basic training in San Antonio, Texas. I had some other training in what was that place that I hate so much? Shepherd Air Force Base, which is in Wichita Falls, Texas. Don't go there if you don't have to. And then I've been to Alabama, Maxwell, Montgomery, Alabama. Don't go there either if you don't have to. And then let's see, I've been to Ohio at Wright-Patterson, Dayton, Ohio. And then I was at Shaw Air Force Base, which is in South Carolina, Sumter, South Carolina, which is about, most people know Charleston, so like 2 hours from Charleston. I've been to Idaho for what's called a manning assist. They didn't have enough people to work, so I went and kind of backfilled for someone for a couple months. Idaho, I thought was going to be horrible. I was like, what is in Idaho? Okay, for one, besides potatoes, I don't like this. And it was super cold, different kind of winter. They put like chains on their tires. I didn't know what that was about. But it was actually an interesting place. I would pick Idaho over Maxwell. And then I've also been to Guam, which was one of my favorite assignments. Do you guys know where Guam is at? It's a little island. It's like 30 miles long. It's by the Philippines in the Pacific. And then right now I'm currently stationed in Japan. So
where's somewhere you would like to work?
So Japan was actually like my #1 for a long time, because so many people were just like, oh, Japan is awesome. It's a great country. Right now in my career, I'm trying to get back to the States. Just because of everything that's going on, it's really, really hard to travel. I would like to go back to Guam and work. If I would get out of the military, I could work at any VA, Veterans Hospital. I could contract into the military at different bases. I know in Pittsburgh, they have Army, Air Force, reserve bases that I have some friends that work at right now that get paid pretty well. I'm like, man, maybe I should get out. But so yeah, overall, it is really hard to settle. I'll tell you that. As a military officer, you move every 2 to 3 years, period. If you're overseas, 2 to 3 years, possibly 4 if you're stateside, but you will continuously move throughout your career. The enlisted side, sometimes you can stay at a base for a long time, but if you're overseas, you always have a 2 to 3 year commitment and then you move. All right. Oh man, what happened? All right, so then, let's see. What advice would you give someone who's thinking about joining the military and the benefits for... So between joining the military, I don't think it's a bad thing. I was super against, so my nieces and nephews are around the age to join. One of my nieces actually joined, she's in the Army Reserves, and another one is thinking about joining the Army as well. And if you want to go enlisted, so the thing about it is, are you ready to go to college, right? So some people go to college because people are just telling them like, you need to go straight into college, which I kind of agree with, but if you're not ready and you're literally wasting your time, you're wasting money and time. If you need something to structure you until you get to that point where you think you can do college effectively, the military is not a bad place, right? I would say to go to the Air Force. That's my bias. A lot of people talk a lot of stuff like, oh, they're really cushy jobs. I would much rather take a cushy military job than be sleeping on a cot in the middle of a desert, right? So you got to weigh your options. If you want to go in enlisted, you would go in after high school. You can go in enlisted or at any time. But if you do have a college degree, I would highly recommend you go the officer route. One, you get paid more. You do have some more responsibility, but it's a very different lifestyle. When I was younger, I was just trying to get stability, right? I was trying to figure out where my life was going because I just failed semester of college and I needed direction. I wasn't ready, if you want to say, to like conquer college. As much as I thought I was on track. I was doing what I needed to do. I had people in my corner. I just wasn't ready. So I needed something to kind of refocus me. As a college graduate, it turned into a career. What I would have never, if you asked me this 10 years ago, I would have told you were crazy. I'm never going, well, maybe 12 years ago, because I joined 10 years ago. I would have told you you're crazy. I'm never going into the military. I remember coming out of high school and recruiters calling me. I'm like, don't ever call my house again. I'm going to college. So it's a little different now because different things that just happen in life in general. Does that answer your question about time frames of military joining at high school versus college? Maurice? Okay, cool, thanks. And then move around, is it considered for safety? No, I think because people get very complacent, because officers definitely, we have some clout in certain areas and they don't want us to get too comfortable and where we are completely running a certain thing. So a lot of times when you start hearing people like say, so we'll have like certain regulations or things that we have to do a specific way, and then they change sometimes. Some people be like, oh, well, this is how we used to do it. And you have to say, well, we don't do it like that anymore. And I understand that you've been here for a long time or you've been here for this specific amount of time, but times change. And we will continue to change with that. And when you get people there for such a long time, they think that they just run everything, and they don't. So that's usually why they move. And I didn't understand that at first when I got to my first base. I was just like, what? Don't you want somebody that like knows what they're doing and they've been there for a long time? So, you know, continuity, yes and no, because it can be kind of toxic sometimes when doing that. So, all right. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the fun stuff in life in general. So my career broadening, or not, my perspective broadening. So I've been to, so granted, I told you all the places that I've been work-wise. For fun, I have been to many, many countries at this point that I never thought that I would get to. So when I was in Guam, I went to Vietnam, I went to Cambodia, Thailand, China, which we probably won't ever get to go there anymore just because of everything that happened. We already knew that we had problems with China, but more than likely, we're not going to be in China for a long time. So I missed the picture. I was supposed to put a picture up here. I actually ran a half marathon on the Great Wall of China for my 30th birthday, which was pretty awesome. Most people go to like Vegas or, you know, they do like New Orleans for their, you know, we call it the Dirty 30. I ran a half marathon on China's Great Wall. So I don't know too many people that can say that. So that's why I did it. I've been to the Philippines, obviously Japan, and Saipan, which is also a little island off of Guam. And so when traveling, so when I was younger, I'm like, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh. I'm going to stay in Pittsburgh my whole life. I'm going to work at UPMC. I'm going to be a doctor. Obviously, life changes, right? And you kind of roll with what's going on in life. But I would never have seen that as a 17, 18, 19-year-old traveling to all these places and just experiencing the different cultures, right? So I did learn a couple words. I'm not fluent in any other language, but I can say a couple things to get by in Japan. My father's Vietnamese, so I can say a couple things in Vietnamese to get me by as well. So let's see, but just seeing other cultures is very interesting because, you know, as an American, it's like, we're Americans, this is how we do things, this is the right way. And then you see other cultures and you're like, that makes a lot of sense. Or like, huh, maybe we could do that better. So just getting out and taking hold of every experience that you can in different places is definitely eye-opening, and it will definitely change your mindset of where you're at. Staying in one place, I always tell people, like, please just travel and see something else in the world. Get out of the United States, get out of Pittsburgh for one. Because even going to Texas and seeing kind of that, and then going, South Carolina was mind-blowing for me. Granted, I knew there were racist people, but the South is blatantly racist. And you're like, oh, okay, haven't seen that before. Like, I've seen some underlying racism, you know, there's some stuff here and there in Pittsburgh, but like blatant. Like, we stay on this side, they stay on that side, and you're like, wow. And then, you know, different countries, it's very much the same of, they'll be nice to you because they know you're spending your money there, but you are not one of them. So very interesting dynamics like that overall. Let's see. Some of your questions. I'm not a doctor. I'm actually a social worker. I have a master's in social work. If you want to be a neurosurgeon, that's awesome. Know that you're going to be in school for a long time, which is fine. That's absolutely great. But what I will tell you is don't give up. You know what I mean? So everybody, I'm not just speaking specifically to you, like I said before, like everybody fails somewhere, but it's not about failing. It's about how you recover and how you get back up and do it again and do it again. And don't let people tell you that you can't do something. So I kind of breezed over it a little bit, like when I was commissioning, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I want to be an officer. But the recruiter was cool, but the person that was commissioning me was like, oh, like your undergrad grades aren't great, like you might not be able to commission. And I was like, is that a challenge? Because we can do this, right? So I was like, set me up with who I need to do. I did all the paperwork. I went, and they're like, oh, you can interview online. I'm like, no, I'm going to go down and talk to them. I'm a very personable person, if you want to say. I'm like, I'm going to go talk to them. Challenge accepted. And I got the job, right? So don't let anybody tell you
that you wanted to be a doctor. That's why I said that.
You want to be what kind of?
No, I thought I heard you say that I wanted to be a doctor, but things changed. That's why I said what kind of doctor.
Oh, I wanted to be an anesthesiologist.
Ooh,
so I did hi, Maurice. Look at you, sir. You just popped up.
What's going on, Megan?
My brother from another mother. So
Maurice is my other child.
Had to jump on the call, so I'm a little late. Sorry.
And then I worked at the Weiser Center for a year, and then I was at the anesthesia department at UPMC. And then I even came back and did some stuff after college. I don't know if you guys remember Dale Fleck. He was awesome. I watched a bunch of surgeries. I've seen neurosurgery, I've seen heart transplants, I've seen amputations. That was all amazing. But somehow I got to where I'm at right now as a social worker. Life changes. But yeah, neurosurgery, awesome. Don't let anybody tell you can't do it. You will have a lot of people that will be like, oh, you're not doing great here, you're not doing great here, whatever. I might not be doing great, but I'm gonna get better. And you just keep it pushing. Because a lot of people will just push you to the point where you're just like, oh, I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. It's not true. People get there. You have to be persistent. It's really just the people who are persistent versus the smartest people. Because I know very, very intelligent people who don't want to do anything. And not saying that musicians are bad, but I've known people that have had super high IQs and just killing the SATs, and they're just like, I just don't want to do the work. All right, cool. Don't do the work then. Just know that you're not going to get that far with the things that you want to do. But the person that is persistent and continues to go, even if you aren't the top of the class, you're not the smartest person, that drive is what's going to get you to where you want to be. And they'll see that. Excluding the US, what country did you like the best? I loved Thailand. I also like Vietnam. I have family there, so it makes it very easy. But Thailand is a very interesting culture. Guam is still considered the US, but it's a territory that has a special place in my heart. It is 80 to 102 degrees year long. Like you never know what month it is. It's just always hot, and you can always go to the beach, and the beach is everywhere. So depending on which country it is how they look at the U.S. Right now, people are not liking the U.S. I would say that because we don't know how to follow directions. And we are all you can be as Americans, and we do what we want, and that's why it was really hard for me to get back to Japan, actually, just because I had to have specific documentation. They're not letting anybody from the U.S. close to Japan unless you're in the military, if you're on specific orders to get there, because they know how reckless we can be. Some obviously countries love the U.S. because they have very good alliances. We have very strong military. We don't always play well with people. We're kind of bullies sometimes, but depending on which countries you're specifically talking about. It is stressful to a point living in Japan without fluently knowing the language. That's Maurice. Maurice lived in Japan too. But they, for the most part, they all speak English if they want to speak English to you. So they all learn English in school. But if you don't try to speak Japanese to them, they're not going to try to speak English to you, which is fair, right? Because you hear super ignorant people in the US all the time, like, oh, we're in America, speak English. So how would I feel? You know what I mean? Like, I come to Japan, I'm like, oh, speak English. Like, you're not even in America. You know what I mean? So it can be stressful. I have learned you do not change your food orders at all. The food on the menu is exactly how it's going to come out. Don't ask them to take off anything or add anything. And sometimes I order it and it comes out and I'm like, what is that? I think I ordered that. Okay. But I can say it's easier, my generation specifically, because we have Google Translate. We have Google Maps. Google Maps is amazing in Japan. You can get anywhere. You just type in wherever you want to go. It'll tell you how to walk there, catch the train, what time the train leaves, what platform you have to be on, what specific routes to take. Google Maps is all things.
It's almost
Google
like they have
Translate.
infrastructure in Japan.
Yeah, Japan is awesome. They are very, very efficient. You know how like the PAT buses, sometimes you're like, oh, it says it'll be here. I'll give it about 10, 15 minutes. Maybe it'll show up, maybe it won't. No, Japan, I don't even need to know. If it tells me what platform to be on and what time. Whatever time that train comes, I'm not even looking at it. I'm just getting on it. That's the train. I'm going to get off when it says that specific time that I need to get off. I don't care what station it says I'm at. That time, I'm getting off. Works like
Y'all got Uber?
Efficient. I don't know. The trains are super efficient. They have taxis, but they do have Uber Eats. This is the first time, I guess, before COVID started, I seen like little McDonald's, like bikes delivering food. I'm like, that's interesting.
You all may not know, but when my husband was in the Air Force in Japan, Megan is on that exact same Air Force base.
Yes.
And works, I think, across the street from where we used to live, Maurice.
Yeah.
It's a small world. And I think
I still haven't found those drinks you were asking about. The apple. Yes,
I love those drinks.
I will say Japan's vending machine game, off the chain. There's a vending machine every 10 feet. You can get drinks, you can get snacks. They have hot soup in the wintertime, hot coffee. I'm like,
I'm into hot coffees.
I pushed a button. I got I thought I just got coffee. I picked it up. It was hot. I was like, oh, excuse me. That's warm. So I learned if I forgot my gloves to just go over to the vending machine and get 2 coffees and put them on my hands and carry them. So yeah, Japan is interesting. If you can ever get to Japan, you should go.
Yeah. Have you been to Showa Park?
I have. I actually live a mile from Showa Park, and I run down there sometimes. I did a half marathon here virtually, and I ran around Showa Park twice and then back to my house. So it's about 5 miles.
Are you in Tachikawa or American Village?
So I'm technically in Kunatachi, which is right next to Tachikawa. It's like the bougie area of Tachikawa. It's like the shady side of Oakland. You know, I do these things, but yeah, it's really not. I am in Tachikawa. I'm not in American Village. They didn't have any housing open. So.
Does anybody else have questions? I mean, anything about Japan, anything about Megan's career? You all are awfully quiet. I know you can unmute at this point. I know we were.
In my trade, we kind of went over what I do. So some of those terms you may or may not know. So like a family advocacy officer. So basically that is like genuine social work. I did in the military. So I do with like couples therapy, maltreatment of kids, maltreatment of family members, domestic violence. That is a huge beast of its own in the military. And then the mental health OIC officer in charge is basically running the mental health ops of like therapy. So all of us, all officers in the mental health field are therapists. So we all can do therapy in some way, shape, or form. We also have a psychiatrist who gives medication, evaluates medication, and psychologists who do psych testing. I'm a social worker, so I strictly do therapy and then manage people as well. For ADAPT, which is Alcohol Drug Prevention Program, something around that. Basically, we deal mostly with alcohol because drugs are illegal in the military, but people still do drugs. And we rehabilitate them or help them while they're on their way out of the military. So earlier you were talking about how like a lot of people are just like strung out on drugs on the streets after getting out of the military. We do help with those services before they get out, and we allow them to go to the VA to get help with those services. And it's a matter of people being willing to use those services or not, or if they're willing to use those services.
So I think Rasul had some questions. Rasul, do you want to unmute so you can ask your question?
Oh yeah, okay. I always wondered this, like, is it a rarity to see Black people in Japan? Because like I always watch videos and like a lot of the people that live there, they have no idea about Black people.
Yeah,
like some of them have never
most
seen a
Asian
Black
countries.
person.
So Japan is 98% Japanese. So yes, it's rare, but not in my world, if that makes sense. So because I'm on a military installation, there are a bunch of Americans, but they know that you're American when they see you. They don't know that I'm American when they see me. Sometimes that becomes a problem until they hear me start talking. I'm like, well, whoa, excuse me. And then they're like, oh, American. Or so like, it's to them, it's derogatory, but to Americans, as we make most things a joke, gaijin means foreigner in Japan. And it's used again as a derogatory term, but we always laugh like, oh, we're the gaijins. Like, just like, they even have like this whole group called the Tokyo Gaijins where they go out and do a bunch of fun stuff like snowboarding and stuff. But again, Japanese are very polite when it comes to that. They won't be outwardly disrespectful. They won't be outwardly, you know, it's just in them to be very, that's their culture, to be very calm, to be very collective. So, but no, in all Asian countries. So for instance, when I went to China, I went with my one friend / coworker. Her name's Markia. She was Black. And literally we're just walking and people would just run in front of her and take pictures because they've never seen a Black person before. And she's like, what the hell? Or, sorry. She's like, what's going on? And so I would just start walking away from her like, they don't want a picture of me, girl. I'm not trying to be in these Chinese people's pictures.
Videos. Or people be like, can I have a picture with you?
Yep. Well, they don't ask, they'll just do it. They like
That disrespectful.
a whole nother
Like,
world. Yeah.
I would think in their culture they will understand that that's disrespectful, just to walk up to somebody and take a picture.
Well, Japan a little bit, but what I can tell you, which is interesting, is that all of their cameras here on their phones make noise here. Most countries actually, except for the US, because again, we do what we want, apparently. All of their cameras, you can't turn off the noise when you take a picture. So even if you're taking a selfie, whatever, you hear every time, loud, like loud. You're not taking no sneak pictures. So I know that started in Japan because they were doing some like weird stuff on the trains where they were trying to like take pictures up girl skirts and stuff like that. But
They actually do that?
They did. There was actually a whole game that they were playing, and how much and how close you could touch somebody, and things like that. So those are like the little intricacies that people don't tell you about, but they're out there.
Yeah, that was like 2014, 2015. They made all phones that are imported to Japan have to have that, right?
Yeah. So that's why I waited until I got to Pittsburgh to get me a new phone, because I want to take my selfies in peace, okay? And if I want to take a picture of your shoes without you knowing, I'm taking a picture.
So there's a couple.
They do have an amazing shoe game out here. Amazing styles out here, like stuff that you'll never see. I brought home a pair of ones. I was wearing a pair of ones home, and I actually gave them to my niece because she's like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, Megan, like I've never seen those." I'm like, "Yeah, because they're Japan exclusive, girl." But I gave them to her because she was being a brat. So let's see.
So the question is, in Japan, is the big screen with like lots of tech outside? I don't know the actual name. I just saw it somewhere online. You mean the televisions screens, or I'm
you
not
mean
sure
like
yet.
outside?
Yeah, like the outdoor billboards, like runner style. Where they just have giant electronic billboards all over the place.
Yeah. But I do know, so a lot of people thought like, oh, Japan is like the tech hub. It's actually Korea right now. Korea is far above the game.
Really? Korea was
I'm
great.
not really a tech person, so I went to, Miss Color, have you heard of Akihabara? It's like a town.
Is it Akihabara or Akihabara? Maybe I was saying it wrong. Yes.
Sure, that place. So apparently it's like a tech nerd's dream.
Yes.
They have like the gaming systems. They have like all of the anime. Like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I play the toy machines, and the toy machines here are cheaters. Okay, they are cheaters, and I don't like it. But that is, if you want like the all the gaming and stuff, like they're huge on gaming. They have just the whole town is just like electronics. It was kind of cool. I didn't know what I was looking at, so I was like, "Yeah, this is great. Yeah, guys." They're like talking about it. I'm like, "Where's the food at?" So they do have a lot of that though. But the big screen, for the most part, I think you're talking about Shibuya. So if you ever heard of Shibuya Crossing, it's like the busiest intersection in the world. Well, not right now, but it has been the busiest intersection in the world. And they have huge screens around, and they actually have cameras to show like where they're at or how many people are crossing at a time. And you'll see people just hitting pictures whenever they're going as well.
What are some of the things you really had to learn moving around so much? Because I know that there are some things that Pittsburghers think is okay, but really isn't.
Yes. Yes. I have learned to be more culturally competent. Understanding that your way is not always the way, and hearing people out. So don't get me wrong, I still have my Pittsburgh ways. I'm a very strong personality, and I'm very headstrong when it comes to certain things, but I have learned to shut up. Literally, that's what it comes down to.
You got to keep your Hill District.
Yeah, I have to keep some of that. Even as an officer, I'm like, oh, calm down. Even if it's wrong, because we've had some. I'm like, okay. I've learned to understand and respect certain cultures and what they do, whether it's right, wrong, as long as it's not directly affecting me, I will kind of take a step back and evaluate if there's something that I should do. So a thing that I do here, which is not culturally acceptable, but I can't let it go. When people are like, if a guy and a female are fighting, like putting their hands on each other, I'm not going to walk past it. If they're or for instance, just things that are just, I know that are wrong. So for instance, there are like these little kids playing in this fountain. But like the certain fountains that they have, like they have a lot of like shrines and like holy things, right? So they like wash their hands, they put the little ladle down, and sometimes people will drink out of it, just depending on whatever. They probably ain't doing that now, but and you know, they pray or whatever. So there's these little boys, probably like 8, 9, 10, 11, I don't know, middle school age, just playing around in it. Like they knew they weren't supposed to be doing that, but they're just like out there wilding out. Like, and I'm looking at them and I was like, oh, that's probably not a thing. So I'm like watching, I'm like, maybe they'll just like keep it moving. So like 10 minutes went by and I went over and I was like, hey, stop doing that. They understood English quite fine because they're like, oh, I'm sorry, like very respectful. I'm sorry, like we don't want to. I'm like, okay, keep it moving. That is not typically what you would do in Japan. You would walk past it. But I'm just like, I don't do with unruly children. I don't do domestic violence. There's certain things that I will stand in and like, we're not going to do that. And it's funny because I actually have a friend here. I went to graduate school at the University of Pittsburgh and she's from Japan. She's from Yokohama. I don't know if you remember Haruka. I don't know if you remember her. But so I bounce ideas and things off of her because I know she knows Pittsburgh. Like her dad used to work for Westinghouse and that's why she went to the University of Pittsburgh for grad school. But then obviously she is Japanese and grew up and has been around this. So I'm like, hey, like I did this thing. What do you think? And she's like, it's not bad, but we just don't do that. And I'm like, okay, I'll try to hold back sometimes, but again, and I've learned that I have to just like, okay, that's what's going to happen. And then in different countries, I will say in China, I wasn't a fan. People talk a lot of stuff on China, but some of that stuff is true. They're very crowded. They don't care about your personal space. They don't care about certain hygiene measures. And they kind of, because there's so many people, yeah, that was a problem for me. And so I knew I had to stand away from the crowd. I knew I had to let every person's just like, oh, I'm going right now. Like, this is where I want to go. I had to learn that I need to stand back away from the crowd because they're just going to like fish, just like going, and just like, all right, I'm gonna wait a second. Japan is really safe. Like one of the most safest places I've ever been in my life. You could leave your purse, your wallet, anything on the ground, come back and it'll be there. Like I've literally seen people, this isn't a great example, but that's what I've seen, of people just like passed out from a night of drinking on the side of the street, like in a bush, like laying in a bush, their wallet, their keys, their phone, just sitting on their chest. Nobody messes with them. Somebody will put a bottle of water next to them for when they wake up. That's how courteous they are.
Wow.
And you're just like,
so
really?
Funny.
So you wake up without your kidneys in the States.
Yeah, right. Like you would just, yeah. But that's something that I have to remember when I go back to the States is not to be as, you know, passive or, so I did this thing, I was at church and this guy like let me go and I like bowed and I was like, oh, we're not in Japan. Like, don't do that. They think that's weird.
Did you get in the wrong side of the car too?
Oh man. So we drive on the other side of the street. I'm actually going to bring a truck back.
Are you? I thought you had to convert it.
No, it has to be 25 years or older. So I'm going to bring a Jimny back.
Oh, wow.
And my dad's like, why would you do that? Like, you're going to be driving on the other side. You can't go through drive-thrus. I'm like, well, maybe it's a good thing, you know?
Drive-thru.
All right, let me see. We have some questions. Mary said, did you run into any Steeler fans in any other country?
Everywhere. Steeler fans are everywhere.
Yes,
everywhere. You hear that, Maury? Steeler fans are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I went to Vietnam in 2010, I seen a Steelers flag. I literally brought back just a bunch of terrible towels and Steeler face masks for a bunch of people that I know here that want them. So when I was telling them, like, oh, we have a bunch of different terrible towels. We got the Nutcracker. We got, you know, turkeys, all that. So,
oh, sports ball.
Hater. I don't even know if we could say you're from Pittsburgh, sir. What is your
I know.
Who
Maurice hates the Steelers. I don't know. I mean, come on. How do you not like the Steelers? Even sometime. Danielle said, did it take you long?
America's team is the Cowboys.
We have a shirt
losing really, really bad, and we
No, the Patriots got all the rings, man.
That's
Steelers got all the rings. Steelers.
Michael said, "Ew, the Cowboys." I was like, "What is it? 1992?
Yes,
Who roots for the Cowboys?"
He's
America. You're a terrorist if you don't root for the Cowboys. Just so you know.
I don't know. The Minutemen were freedom fighters, my friend.
Oh God. Okay, so did it take you long to get used to living in Japan? Is it Japan, Danielle? Is that what the country, or Guam? Which one?
It actually took me, well, I'll just talk about all of them. It actually took me longer to adjust to South Carolina than it has to other countries. Like, that sounds crazy, but they are definitely a different breed down there. Like, I almost freaked out. Like, I'm not an anxious person. I don't, obviously I'm a therapist by trade. I was at Walmart one day and I was looking around and I was like, this is really where I live. Do you see these people? These people are crazy. Oh my gosh. Like, and even like the churches, like they say, this is so true. And sometimes you hear stuff and you're like, whatever, that's not a thing. The most segregated hour of the South is church hour. That is 100% true. That is the craziest thing. I could never go to a church and walk in and there be a mixed crowd. So I grew up in a diverse church, the one over in Northside, Allegheny Alliance Center Church. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. But literally the slogan is serving Jesus in diverse communities. So when I walk into these churches and I'm like, they don't even know what Asian people are down there apparently. I walk in, it's an all black church or an all white church. And they're just like looking at me like, who is this girl? And I'm just like, I just wanted to worship Jesus. I don't know. Like, I'm sorry. Like, y'all sit in the back. So it took me a little longer to adjust to South Carolina. Guam.
Well, those are the same people that say Jesus was white and blonde with blue eyes. Like,
oh, we have all the guys. They're like, oh God, I don't care what color this man was. He came and saved all of us. Can we just go off of that? Like. So, but then Guam, it's cool. It's super chill, super island life. But what they do tell you is get used to having very slow service. It's island life. So like, the typical wait time for food when you get to a restaurant, maybe 15, 20 minutes, try like 45 to an hour. Just, y'all can't do this. Just know to order a couple drinks before you start ordering food. Cause it's going to be a while. Like it's going to be a while. But they are very friendly for the most part in Guam. Just get used to I had to get used to my patience. My patience is what really, really needed challenged there. And then they're also back in the 90s. That was a good and a bad thing. They play like all 90s R&B. I'm like, you think you get like some island music out here? Like, no. 90s R&B, like Biggie, Tupac, Aaliyah, like playing in all of. I'm like, oh, okay. I can get down with this.
It's a third world country in America.
Yeah. They were definitely they're like the hood Hawaii.
This is Guam you're talking about?
Yeah, Guam. It's like the hood Hawaii.
Hood Hawaii?
Yeah. And then Japan, obviously, just the cultural difference, the language barrier was the hardest. So in Guam, you use US dollars. English is the language, you know what I mean? It's still an American territory. You can get around quite fine. And if you have some hood skills, you're good to go. So, and then they went, are you local? I'm like, maybe. What's that mean here? Like, do I get faster service? Is somebody's uncle here? Like, and then Japan is just very opposite. Service is amazing. You don't have to tip in Japan. I love that about Japan.
But when you come back, did you not want to tip? I got mad when I had to tip.
Good job. Like, you didn't do anything. I picked it up. Why do you get a tip?
Exactly. I don't understand it. I don't understand.
But yeah, so what I didn't realize. Yeah, so they say tipping, don't tip in Japan. And as an American, you're like, oh, everybody wants a little extra money. Like, what are you talking about? Everybody wants a tip. Until someone told me, if you tip, that's essentially telling them that is all they are worth.
Yeah.
So you think you're leaving a $5 tip, you're telling that person they're worth $5. It's so disrespectful. Just don't do it. Just keep your money. Keep your money. You're going to get great service. but they also get paid a decent wage. Working at McDonald's, working as a server, they get paid a decent wage. And most of the people all have college degrees. It's not like, you know, low on the totem pole to do X, Y, and Z. They all get paid a decent wage.
Raynell said, are things cheap in Japan that you know would have been thousands of dollars here?
No, opposite. Japan is expensive. Sushi is a little cheaper. Sushi.
You can buy it out the tank in Japan.
Yeah, like they will cut it up right in front of Guam too. They'll cut it up right in front of you and serve you. It's really good. They have these sushi, we call them gaikusu. It's basically like a conveyor belt of sushi that you can order it and it'll come out on a conveyor belt, or they have the little trains. Those are cool. But
sorry, one thing just to add in there, just as kind of like a thought experiment. Raynell, when you think about places like where things are really expensive, right? Japan, England, you're talking about New York City. What do all these places have in common in terms of what type of land they are? Like Hawaii, Japan, England, are they like, okay, well, they're not in the middle of the country, right? They're islands. So everything is an import, everything shipped in. So there's a real good chance that anytime you're on an island of any kind, you got it. Anytime you're on an island of any kind, it's going to be real expensive, which is why I never even thought about living in New York. So anyway, sorry, Miss Megan, please continue.
No, I will say.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Their produce, their fruit is amazing. I've never tasted strawberries so amazing. They're $10 a pack.
And those big apples that they put in a little white little thing?
Yeah, $20 for an apple. They're delicious. They're delicious. You only get one.
Yes, it's beyond the golden delicious. It was good.
You must be rich.
$10 each. It might as well be made of gold.
Yeah. Did they celebrate Christmas in Japan?
So Japan is really interesting. They do not have a specific religion. So like America is predominantly like Christian Catholic, you know what I mean? As much as we say, and I didn't realize that until I was in grad school when my friend from Japan was just like, you guys are really religious. And I'm like, not really, you know what I mean? Like people have their religion. She's like, on your money, it says in God we trust. I'm like, you're right. That's very true.
As always.
So they celebrate whatever they feel like, essentially. So it's not a national holiday, but they do have the most national holidays of like most countries. I think they're like in the top. They have like Ocean Day, Mountain Day, Child Day, Grandparent Day, Tree Day. You know, they just have like all of these, like they're very Buddhist oriented though, like very natural, but they respect all religions. And they will let you off for like Christmas and not really Thanksgiving, but because I'm on a military base, we get off Thanksgiving. But they respect all of the religions, but they don't specifically, like they have a bunch of Christmas stuff out that you can buy and celebrate. But it's not just like the whole country is celebrating Christmas. It's whoever chooses to celebrate Christmas. Mm-hmm. And usually like even Christians, the Jews, like they all have the holidays around the same time frame. So like Hanukkah is around, you know what I mean, Christmas, and then Ramadan, like all those things are all like kind of in the same time frame. So you still celebrate, it's just what you decide to celebrate is up to you.
So
sorry, funny story. First time I realized, so the first place I ever been to outside of the United States was Vietnam, because my dad and his family over there. So I went, and we went right around Thanksgiving. And I was like, yeah, of course we're celebrating Thanksgiving. And then I'm like, what? That's not a thing. That's definitely an American thing. And then I was confused because Vietnam didn't have Christmas off because they don't have a national, you know what I mean, religion. Do people celebrate Christmas? Absolutely, if they want to, but their thing is going to church. It's not giving presents. It's not, you know what I mean? It's all religious based. So they may celebrate it, but they celebrate it very differently. The Philippines love Christmas. Like they love Christmas. They'll have signs like, 100 days out until Christmas, and you're like, what? What are you talking about? Like, but they love Christmas, but they're also very Catholic based. So
Rasul wants to know if everything is smaller in Japan compared to the US, like cars, houses, and clothes.
yes.
Yeah.
So I have an Asian build, right? I like wear a medium in clothes here. I came back to the States and I tried to get a dress for a date night. The lady was like, "You don't fit nothing in here." Like, what? I'm a grown woman, ma'am. I did not fit nothing in that store. So yes, everything is small. My house is tiny. Like, so when I was in South Carolina, my house was probably double this size. And this is considered a large apartment. I have 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, living room, and a balcony, but it is tiny. Cars are, so I got a regular size American car, like, you know, I had a Honda, it would be a Honda Accord. In the States, it's a Honda Inspire. Everyone's like, your car is so big. I'm like, this is an average size car. Like mini coupes and these the cubes, those are a thing completely over here. But it makes sense because their streets are so small. Like, I can barely fit down some of the streets in my car. I know how to drive and I can navigate, but it is very much smaller here, for sure. And you can tell when Americans walking around Japanese because they look huge.
I actually have a quick question. Maurice just tossed a burn in the chat.
Yeah, he did.
I put exact thank you. Thank you for the inch.
I know, my wife keeps saying she's 5'2". I'm like, I'm not even wearing my dance clothes, dear. Anyway, so just a nerdy question. Is Shinto still I mean, I know it's a religion and a philosophy traditionally, but is Shinto practiced or is it largely like a cultural remnant at this point?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you.
There are, sorry, I'm like, I have no idea.
All good.
There are, they go to shrines for New Year's, and I went, but then I was raised Baptist. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, don't you dare ring that bell. Don't you throw that money in that thing or pray to that God. Like, I don't know what. It's like, it's the soccer God. I'm like,
Yeah, first time I walked into a church, I was surprised I didn't burst into flames. I know the feeling.
Yeah, Jesus gonna strike me down right now. But yeah.
All right, thank you.
They're not super religious. They just do it as like a cultural thing, overall.
Cool, thank you.
They all have like their shrines. So.
Have you been to see the Buddha?
I have not yet. I should. But there's a picture on the last slide. That's in Iwo Jima. Do any of you know where that's at or what that is? It's World War II.
Did Hiroshima?
Yeah, Iwo Jima.
Oh, the bomb?
So Iwo Jima is an island.
Oh, I thought you said Hiroshima. My bad.
Yeah, that's where they bombed. So I have a picture on the last slide up in the corner. I'm like standing between, they're actually like stands that people leave stuff for the fallen soldiers. So that island is a sacred island to Japan. Yeah. And the only people that are allowed to be on that island, period, are the American military and the Japanese military. So that island is completely off limits to anybody because it's a sacred island, because so much bloodshed was there. So we used to have this quarterly flight that would go out there and take us out just to kind of see some of the stuff. All of the things from World War II are still there. So like the sand has bullets in it still. There are still the ships that crashed on the island, on the beach. They are all still there. The pillboxes where they were like shooting out of in the caves are all still there. The machinery, it's like untouched. And they're like, well, why didn't anybody clean it? Like nobody is allowed on that island. So that's a super cool, unique thing that I could have only done in Japan in the military. So I thought that was a pretty cool picture. Oh, wow. There were some other ones, but that's a good Japanese story.
There's something else in the chat. This might be a stupid question, but is karate and martial arts as big in Japan as America makes it seem?
Not really. They do a lot of yoga. They do like Tai Chi and more relaxation. It's not so much to fight, right? It's for the mental health, the soul, to kind of soothe and cleanse the soul. It's not so much for fighting as it would be in other countries.
People here make it seem like that's all like people from like Japan and like China do. It's just like fight or like know how to fight with like a sword or just know like kung fu.
Yeah, we like to oversimplify other cultures in our country. We like to boil it down, make it a cartoon, and be like, "Cool, got it."
Right. Well, different. So they do have like the samurai swords and stuff like that. The thing here that's really interesting, especially in my field, is that I forget what it's called, but like suicide is a big thing here. It's culturally acceptable. They have a thing called the suicide forest that people will go to and kill themselves. On average, we were talking about the stats the other day where, so for COVID, people who have died of COVID here is about 1,000 people since it started, period. A little bit over 1,000. I'm pretty sure it's 1,200 to 1,400 people that die from suicide every day, or no, every month in Japan. So like putting that into perspective of like, what's the pandemic right now for Japan? So, and they do a lot of, I forget what it's called, but it's basically like an honor killing of themselves. And that comes along with like the swords and stuff like that as well. There's a specific term. Do you know the term, Jeremy? You know what I'm talking about?
I think Rasul actually just put it in the chat. It's seppuku, isn't it?
I forget but it's with a sword, yeah.
Yeah, and I know that kamikaze, what came out of that, the similar tradition, but similar kind of reverence for that. So
okay, but so the different Asian countries have the different types of martial arts. So whatever's specific to them, like, so I know my dad's Vietnamese. My dad knows karate. You know what I mean? He knows. What was the other one? There's a bunch of different names. I am not well versed in any of this. My sister was learning Taekwondo at one point, but they do have like different martial arts for different countries. I think Americans, for the most part, we don't differentiate between the countries. We're just like, oh, Asians, or don't ever say Orientals, but you know, they'll say like things like that, like, oh, you know, they're all like, people never knew I was Asian when I was there. They thought I was Mexican. Like, they have no idea. Other Asians are like, you definitely look Asian. We don't know which one you are because you're mixed. But, so I've slowly learned the different Asian cultures. But yeah, we do oversimplify of like, oh, it's just karate. Well, there's like karate, taekwondo, tai chi, you know what I mean? Like all these different variations go to different countries.
Are there similar like regional cultural differences in Japan as there are in, I know that China's, you know, in terms of landmass is significantly more vast, but are the differences between like, you know, mainland and Okinawa and even parts of the mainland, are the cultural differences as stark?
They're very, especially Okinawa, because mainland Japan, like they don't consider Okinawa Japan. Okinawans, they're Okinawans, they're not Japanese.
It's like Sicily.
Yeah, so they're kind of like, you know, they do have a very different culture. And even like Kyoto, so they'll talk about like the different provinces and their specific things that they do. I don't know all of them specifically, but I do know they can differentiate. They'll be like, oh, those people are from there. Oh, they do that, they're from there. And you're like, interesting. Nice to know.
Cool, thank you.
This is interesting.
And it's funny because like a lot of people, again, like when you're just like, oh, Japan. So people have been like, oh, I'm going to come visit you in Japan and I want to go here, 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 and here. And I'm like, those are all like 4, 5, 8 hours apart. So it's like someone coming to the US and be like, hey, I'm coming to visit you. You live in Pittsburgh. I want to go to New York. California, Colorado in one day. I'm just going to be there for 2 days. And you're like, I need you to do a little bit more research because that's not a thing. We'll be on the train the whole time. Yeah, so from here, so I went to Kyoto. It took us 3 hours on a train to get to Kyoto. And that's the bullet train. That's going like 200 some miles an hour. So you can definitely fly to different parts of Japan easily, just like you would in the US. And driving is expensive here. Expensive.
I heard if you see an Asian, you shouldn't say they are Japanese if you don't know 100% that they are really Japanese, but instead you should call them Asian.
Yeah, essentially. That's just like if you see a Hispanic person and you're like, oh, are you Mexican? You're like, hey man, like they could be either. So Asia, think about it. Asia is a whole continent, right? And so I grew up in Pittsburgh in the Hill District. I didn't know, like, oh yeah, I know some Asians don't get along, they talk about each other, whatever. No, it's actually a big thing. And I learned that in college when my Japanese friend here, someone called her Korean and she flipped out. So Japanese and Koreans do not get along. She's like, do I look Korean? I'm like, they don't know. Yeah, like they actually don't know. But yeah, it's very offensive, essentially, just because that's Asia. Again, Asia is a whole continent. So they'll be more receptive if you say Asian than if you say like you're from China and they're Japanese or you're Korean, because they're whole countries. You know what I mean? It's like them someone asking you coming up like, oh, you're from North America? Oh, are you from Mexico? And you're just like, what? But because we can't differentiate most times, like I couldn't differentiate for a long time. The respectable way is just saying like, oh, what country are you from? You know what I mean? Like, and then just being respectful in that manner versus be like, oh, are you Chinese? Are you this? Are you that? And every time someone would do, people would typically like, oh, what are you? That's also an offensive question. I'm always like, I'm human. What are you? Oh, where are you from? I'm from the Hill District. Where are you from? Like, no, like, where are you from?
Or no, where are your either where are your parents from or where are you really from is my favorite.
I was born in McGee, down in Pittsburgh, in Oakland. But
yeah.
so,
and the
but
funny
where's
thing
your
about
family
that
from?
is that,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Please continue.
No, it's just like, where's your family from? Where's it? And you're just like, okay.
Yeah.
But Americans are very egocentric, and they don't really care about other people's cultures most times. So you have to educate them politely, sometimes.
Sometimes.
But no, they would much rather you say Asian, but it's easier just to be like, hey, what country are you from? But then sometimes that can be offensive too, because then they're like, I'm from America. And you're like, okay. What's your nationality? I'm American. And you're like, how do I say this? What is your ethnicity? So.
Danielle says she heard that in Japan, people usually that move there work to teach. They teach English when they move there, relocate to Japan.
They can. It's an easy job. Depending on what else you want to do. You can come here and teach English, but there are a lot of people, like I do on my base, it's just like volunteer-wise. On Monday nights, we have like a conversational Japanese class. So it's a lot of nationals that work on base, and they know how to speak English, but they want conversational Japanese. They don't want like the textbook version. So they'll ask me, like, to me, it's funny. Like the one guy, I know he listens to like hood radio because he's always asking, he's like, what does bougie mean? Or what does this mean? And I'm just like, okay, we could do this. Like, and then I'll explain how to use it. I'm like, but don't say that. Like that's, So they just want to learn like how to conversate, like hold a regular conversation versus being very textbook when they speak to you. But a lot of people can't, anybody can teach English essentially when they come here. And it's an easy job because especially if you're fluent in English. But a lot of people come here for other reasons, like tech jobs. I know one of my friends, he was here before and he has like a handful of friends that actually work for like Japan, Google and Instagram and, you know, all the other tech companies in Japan, but they're also DJs because they love DJing here too. So they do that as well. And they don't teach English. They just work, you know, making 6 figures, doing whatever else they're doing. So there are a lot of other jobs that people can come here and do outside of teaching English, but English is an option.
Any other questions, guys? We've had Megan for a while.
I'm here all day.
I've enjoyed every minute of this. I'm
Absolutely.
so happy to see you, Megan.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for all your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And
Any questions on careers or school or transitioning from schools to college, transitioning into, I don't know if anybody's looking into going out of state for college.
I think the only senior, Ronique is the only senior. She wants to go to Pitt. Is it Pitt, Ronique?
Are they there?
Yeah, it's a few other schools too, yeah.
Okay.
What are you trying to major in at Pitt? Maybe.
Hello?
I want to go to an Ivy League school. I want to go to Harvard. I believe that's located in Boston, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Look up Mr. Jeremy.
I know.
No, that's cool. Have you looked at the Boston area?
No, being that I'm in high school, I should probably start doing that.
Yeah, I know a guy.
I'm going to do it real soon.
Yeah. Just look up different things. Look up blogs and stuff of like what people have seen, the cultural diversity. That's a big thing. Like as much as you don't realize it, like granted, like Pittsburgh has its stuff, you know what I mean? But there are other parts of the country that you're just like, oh, I should probably know that.
Yeah, Boston is the most segregated city in the country, Trinity. It's by school district, by living, by just the neighborhoods that people live in. It is the most segregated city in the country and has been for about 15 years. It's also been voted the least friendly city in the country and the worst drivers in the country the last 6 years. So keep that in mind.
Well, those are things for sure. Like those aren't things that people just normally tell you. You're like, oh, Boston is so pretty and they have blah, blah, blah. You need to look up some of those other things so you're not blindsided when you get there.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to just go there because it's an Ivy League school and I heard like so many good things about it. But being that I want the career I want, I think I'm going to have to think more about that and have to actually go to a school that there's going to be schools that at least I know that like provide my major, but I need to go to a school that actually, how do I say this? Like,
what do you want to major in?
I want to be a neurosurgeon, but I want to go to a school that actually teaches me a lot about my major, not just a school that has it, if that makes sense.
Well, what I'll tell you for sure is being for a neurosurgeon, your undergraduate can be in almost anything. Obviously of the sciences, you have to have your sciences. Right. So be careful because you're going to spend a lot of money. Med school is expensive. All school is expensive, but med school is expensive, right? So look into how to cut, see who's giving you the most money, who has good programs that can get you into a medical school. Which medical school do you want to go into? Because you're not just jumping straight into medical school. A lot of people, what they do, because they can't get in, some people can get into medical school straight out of undergrad. Awesome. A lot of people will take a master's degree and then go into medical. So that's another 2 years, right? So kind of evaluating where you need to start and is that actually helpful for you? Like I'm not telling you not to go to an Ivy League school, but is that going to be beneficial for you getting into med school, right?
Yeah.
I know a couple people who went to Harvard that are actually in the military and I'm like, whoa, like that's interesting. But they did like English majors or art majors or whatever else. Harvard's good for law, right? They more than likely have a good medical program, but look into who would set you up for success the most. And then also how you can cut costs. Who's giving you the most money to knock out that undergrad? You know what I mean? Because everybody has to do undergrad, but which one is going to cost you the least and get you to where you need to go? Because I know people coming out of med school with over $100,000 in debt. Easy. And then when you come out to be a resident, you're not making anything for real. And you have to get all those clinicals together before you get there. So it's not going to be an easy road, but like I told you before, don't give up, don't quit on it. People are going to tell you you can't do it. Keep going. Just keep going, because people are going to continue to push you down, but you can get there. And then what I will tell you, I've told a lot of students this, just because I came from all public schools. People will absolutely look down on you for being in public schools in college, because you also have to remember, in college, it's a different ballgame, right? You might be the best of the best in your school. You might be the best and the best in your district. But these people, some other people are coming from basically prep schools. They're coming from private schools where their parents spend already hundreds of thousands of dollars on their elementary, middle school, and high school to get them to these specific places, right? They have these connections. So just know what you're up against, right? I'm not saying that you can't do it. You can absolutely do it, but you have to be prepared for that, like that mindset, and kind of understanding, just like Mr. Jeremy said, like, know those places, because know that at Harvard, they're going to look at you very differently when you get there. And this is super messed up, and I've seen it in so many different avenues. I have a cousin, she's half black, half white. She's an engineer. And every time she would go into like one of her higher level engineering classes, they would look at her and be like, oh, you're in the wrong classroom. She's like, I'm absolutely not in the wrong classroom. This is where I'm supposed to be, and I'll sit right in the front. You know what I mean? And that's just in college. That's not even, you know what I mean, like in the work field. And then she's also experienced it in the work field in Pittsburgh. She works for a very good company, PJ, Dick, and Trimble. I don't know if you guys know them, but a lot of it's family owned. And she had to bust her butt to get to where she's at, where this other kid comes in. He's like one of the boss's son's friends who barely passed school and is working, making the same amount as her, right? And she's just like, are you guys using me for minority stats? And they absolutely were. Was she amazing at her job and had to prove herself? Yes, but essentially they hired her for minority stats. And you're just like, wow, like it's still there. It still happens.
Yeah. So
just being prepared for some of those like hard life lessons, if you want to say, like they're still out there, but you have to continue to fight it. A lot of people are just like, whatever, I'm not dealing with this, which is one way out of it, and just being like, I'm not going to deal with, you know, these people being like this. But at the same time, what does that do for you, right? So kind of prepping yourself before you get there. Where else does everybody want to go? Or what are your thoughts right now? Because I'm telling you, it's going to change. I changed my major like 4 times in undergrad. And then when I graduated from undergrad, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. My friend's like, oh, you should do a social work program. I know the director. And I'm like, sounds like a plan. I'll get there. But what else do you guys want to do?
I have a
Anika,
question
are you
for
back?
Trinity. Did you hear me? I have a question for Trinity. Why is the some school so important to you? Why do you think you have to go there to
At Ivy
succeed?
League school?
Yes.
I just feel like there's not a lot of, well, of course there is, but I feel like there's not really a lot of colored kids or kids that look like me that go to that school. So it's not necessarily me proving a point. I just want to, not necessarily inspire, but I want to do something that makes me happy. I want to say like, oh yeah, I know like Pitt's a good school, but I want to say I went to an Ivy League school. I went to Harvard, or I went to Yale. I went here, I went there, my GPA was this, or I graduated with this, or I got accepted to all these schools. That's why I want to go to a school that I know I'll have a better education at. That's all.
Where do you go to high school?
I go to prep, and I don't want to go there. I want to actually go. My mom is looking into private schools at the moment. We haven't found any, but we're debating on it because I still want to get like Pittsburgh Promise and stuff. But being that I do want to go to an Ivy League school, and if I do get in, I don't think it's gonna get off. I don't think that I'll be able to have it, right, Miss Carla?
Yeah,
No,
Pittsburgh Promise.
not for Pittsburgh Promise.
Yeah,
If you go to
that's what I'm
UPenn,
saying,
I'm
yeah.
sure. But usually, like Alexis was saying yesterday, they have like the Gates Millennium Scholarship will cover for any school in the in the United States. But if you are most of the Ivies are zero loan schools. If your family makes under 100, and I think it's $120,000 or $150,000 a year, you basically go for free. So that would be undergrad. There would be some expenses, probably your housing, and your meals, but the tuition would be covered. So it's designed that if you get in, they make sure that paying for it is not a barrier. And that's why, you know, when Alexis was talking yesterday, it's like she's still not paying for school. I mean, the Millennium Scholarship paid for everything undergrad, but now she's getting her graduate degree and she's still not paying for it. So, and she didn't talk about it yesterday, but she went to South Africa for a semester. That was also covered in her tuition. So a lot of times if you get in, paying for it should not be a barrier.
And another thing, Ms. B, like this program, we had a speaker yesterday. She was in this program and she went to an Ivy League school. So it gives me inspiration. Like, I know I can do it. Like somebody that was where I was.
I'm saying that you can't do it. I was just wondering what was your reason, because I remember you were so impressed with Alexis yesterday. But there are so many other good schools too. So you have to make sure that they have what you want.
Right. And that's the most
really
important.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
really
I mean, really, I think Princeton would have a better program for medical than Harvard. Like Megan said, Harvard is for law, but Princeton has like a really good medical program.
Something that
I just wish I had a chance to meet all of you. I'm going to have to do this some way. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I missed this.
No, I'm gonna come down there too whenever you guys open back up.
I know. Megan was just in Pittsburgh and she was like, I'm going to come down. I'm like, no, you're not.
I was like, what? I come down every time.
Yeah, I know. This is like the first time in I don't know how many years that, you know, she's coming to Pittsburgh and we didn't get to see each other. But Michael, I saw your hand was up and I think there's some things in the chat. We're not going to keep Megan all night long.
I'm here all morning long. I told you I'm in Raw.
Well, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say I want to go to college in Philly, New York, or Atlanta for film and media studies and minor in sports media or sports communications.
Okay.
Cool.
Do you have a preference on one? So you listed a couple. What are the reasonings behind? Do you just have locations right now, or do you have actual schools that you're looking into?
For the locations is because that's where like the film industry is popping right now. And yeah, that's all.
So yeah, again, it doesn't always come down to money. You can find money, you can get money different places. But just know that they're all pretty expensive. But Philly, you could probably use, you know, more than likely Pittsburgh Promise.
Yep.
New York is an expensive city.
I'm not eligible for the Pittsburgh.
Oh, that is right. I keep forgetting that.
What school are you at?
Pittsburgh School.
Central Catholic.
Oh, okay. So yeah, but even then, out of state is like double.
Just add 10 grand. Yeah, we've had a couple of speakers. And
Oh,
it's like,
you know, $10,000. But no, all those schools are awesome to look into. Just see what you can get out of each one of them whenever you're applying. And what I also suggest, like outside of the money, when you do get into whatever school that you guys get into, because I have no doubt that you'll get into a school, make sure you find those communities that you need to be a part of. So I've always been part of one of the minority boards. I was part of the Veterans Board when I was at Pitt. I'm part of the Commission Grade Officer CGO Board, and just having those connections with different people, because you're going to need them. You know what I mean? Like other people are going to go through some things. You're going to go through some stuff and you're like, why is this happening to me? And knowing that it can also affect other people and kind of, I don't want to say commiserate with people, but kind of look at the challenges and see who else is going through things. It's always good to have somebody else there, and a board that can actually change different things and policies in that school. So don't let other people be your voice, you know, have your own voice in those areas as well. Finding those in college, in grad school, whatever other organization that you guys have, make sure you have a voice. So people aren't just telling you what's going to happen, what you're going to do. Be a part of that.
Awesome. Right now, your hands up.
What I was going to say about Trinity, I was going to say go into a school that doesn't cost so much, starting off with I don't know, just an example CCAC or something, but then that's for your undergrad, but when you're going for your major, then go to a higher up school, because that's going to be when you get a job, they're gonna worry about what college you went to. So like saying like, yeah, I went to Yale, then they're gonna be impressed. But like at your undergrad, I don't think they really worry about that. And then for me, I don't really know what college. I want to go to HBCU, but I don't know where. And I don't know what I want to be anymore. I used to want to be a neurologist. Then I wanted to be a cardiologist. I don't know. I want to work in a science and medical field. So
yeah, it'll continue to change as things come up. Like I said, if you would have told me in high school that I was going to be a social worker, I'm like, you're crazy as all get out. Like, no, I'm not. Like, I don't even like kids, but it's not really always about kids. And even just telling me that I was going to be a therapist, like with my personality, it's funny because people will be like, you're a what? Like, you're the meanest, nicest person I know. Like, how are you a therapist? I'm like, because people need to know about themselves. And they, you know what I mean? Like, they need to know the honesty and like what they need to fix. But it's funny because, like I said, if you would have told me 10, 12 years ago that I was going to be in the military, I'd have told you were crazy. If you would have told me I was going to be a social worker, I'm like, I'm going to be an anesthesiologist. Like, I walked into breech mender, so I'm going to be an anesthesiologist. They're like, oh, you don't want to be the nurse? No, I'm going to be the doctor. Like, don't tell me to be a nurse. You know what I mean? Like, but it changes. You know what I mean? Like, life situations will change. Hopefully this doesn't happen to any of you, but for instance, like my cousin that I told you who's an engineer, like she went to Purdue for her first year and a half, and then her mother passed away. She had to come back to Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? And then she ended up having a child at 19, which, you know what I mean? Single mom with no support. You know what I mean? She was getting financial aid, but it was hard because they're asking for your parents' income and she doesn't know her dad and her mom passed away. You know what I mean? Like, she had all these life struggles that so many people would have just been like, I'm done. Let me drop out. I'm gonna just get a job. Let me figure out what I need to do. But she continued to press. Like, she is like an inspiration to so many people. She's came and spoken a couple of times.
With the women's seminar. Is that the one? The women's seminar? Yeah, she was fantastic. Yeah,
she was. She's been to the house too. I think the last Christmas we had, she was here, wasn't she?
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's definitely, you know what I mean? Like, you will go through some hard times. Like, you don't know what life's gonna throw at you. You know what I mean? So we always have all these great aspirations, and not saying that you can't get there, but know that you will have challenges along the way. And when I tell you, like, there will be certain failures, just figure out how to keep it moving. Like, it shouldn't keep you down to the point where you don't want to press forward, right? It's going to be hard. You might have like a couple months or even a year where you're just like, man, I really need to figure this out. But don't let those things stop you in your tracks. I've seen it happen to so many people. I have a friend he was in his last year of college for business and his little sister passed away. He completely dropped out. 18 credits to go to finish and has not finished in the last 5, 6, how old am I now? 6, like 8 years. I'm like, you literally could have took one class every year and been done. So things will definitely push you down. Just know that you have to keep pushing because you don't know what life's going to throw at you.
Something that was really helpful for me, like it is that I go to SATech and like there's class, I take like a B&B class of body and behavior. So I'm learning about like what doctors will learn and stuff. So it's kind of helpful. It's like, I know, like, do I want to be in this career? Like, there's stuff for tech, there's stuff for building things. So it's just like kind of helpful to see like if you really want to be that or if you want to go down another path.
Right. And like I said, anesthesiology, that was me all day. I did all the internships. I knew about all the gases they put people to sleep with. I've seen hundreds of surgeries. I was just like, this is me. This is what I'm going to do. And it just, I don't know, it just veered. And it was just, on a religious standpoint, I don't know how religious, I feel like God puts you in a certain place at a certain time for certain people. And I can definitely see, like, anesthesiologists make ridiculous money. They're like the highest paid doctors, but they also have the highest malpractice rate. But I can see so much change in the people that I work with, that I talk to, that my patients that I have now. And I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. You know what I mean? There's the career there where you want to make money. I'm doing all these things. I'm doing great. You know, I'm a success. And then there's things that like you genuinely love doing. You know what I mean? You're not going to love it every day. You know what I mean? People are people. But when you genuinely love doing something, that's when you know you're in the right place. Like, I promise you, Miss Carla's not at this job for the money. right? Because Scarlett have paid our paychecks before. Like, she's been here for a long. She loves what she does. Y'all get on her nerves sometimes? Did we get on her nerves a lot of times?
Yes. Not this group, not ever. Yeah.
We were pretty bad too. Like, you had all Hill District kids.
Actually, there were quite a few on today from the Hill. So, I mean, I don't even think it's where they're from. I think, you know, when we were in the community, it was just like everything came in the door, which I kind of enjoyed that a little bit more because we were right there. We knew families better and would really get to see them. And if I hadn't seen you, it's like, okay, I know Megan's walking past here at 3:15. Right. So I'm going to the door and I'm going to stop. You know, it's like, where you been? You know, what's going on? But I mean, like you said, I love the whole month. All of our speakers have been talking about where, you know, where the challenges are going to happen, but just keep pushing forward. And I think, you know, we've had some very amazing presentations this month. And, you know, Megan is saying, you know, all she wanted was anesthesiology. And Miss Mary, she was our representative at UPMC. She was on the call earlier. And I remember Megan's first placement was at the Weiser Center, which now is a good placement. And that's where they teach doctors how to intubate patients in bedside manner. And we've had a great relationship with them since you were in the program. But when Megan was there, they had her counting the sugar packets. And it was, yes, how many, you know, it was like.
That was Megan? I heard that. That was Megan.
Stories I heard. Magazines like this. Like, what? I'm not washing your dishes, lady.
Exactly. And I was like, you know, we have to get, I remember calling Mary and I'm like, we have to get her out of there. There's no way she's going to be putting up with that. Her name was Krista. I'll never forget her.
Seen her at Kennywood probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And I just looked at her.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember I said to Megan, I was like, we have to get you out of there. She's like, no, I'm going to do what I have to do until I can get to where I need to be. And that's where the placement in anesthesiology came up. And I remember taking a tour to the Presby, or whichever Montefiore Presby, and Megan was in the operating room. You know, like they were doing a colonoscopy or a brain surgery. I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah, but it was brain surgery because the guy was up, and you could like see the brain waves.
So I mean, and she was like 16 years old, looking at these surgeries. So when she got to college, it was like, okay, she's at Pitt, she's doing what she needs to do, and we were still connected. She had come and visit me, and like she said, after that first couple of years, it wasn't going where she wanted it to go, but I saw that she never stopped. That's how I met her, being persistent, and that's how she's always been. So I remember her, it was like, I'm having a hard time, but I'm working through it. And not only did she graduate from Pitt, she graduated with 2 degrees at the same time. So it's like, don't stop. I mean, it's, you can do anything, Trent.
Yeah. And people will try to stop you. Like, don't think.
Oh, yeah.
There are definitely people against you. I don't want to say, like, you have a bunch of people behind you pushing you forward, but you will run into those people. I remember when I was in the program, we had this girl, I don't know if you remember Tiffany, that was at, what's the Catholic school? Central, not Central.
Oakland Catholic.
Oakland Catholic.
Yeah.
And remember one of her teachers, so she was like 4.0, like high scholars, and she asked one of the teachers for a recommendation. Yeah. Literally, the teacher tells her, because she's one of the only Black students, you're not going to reach anything but CCAC. I'm not giving you a recommendation. What?
Yeah.
Just barriers like that. And I think I remember like where my actual switch came from anesthesiology. I took this social problems class and I was hearing all these things and I'm like, no, that's not a thing. Like we're going to fight against, like, that's not.
Was that the grade for?
A lot of people in my class.
I remember that.
Oh man, I was fighting people every day.
I remember.
I was just like, no, we're not doing this. Like, why would you think that? It was crazy. But a lot of people my year in my high school are all very like active in like change of like urban areas and like pushing kids forward and making sure people are getting on the right tracks.
Right.
Because we see how much people try to push us back just because of where we come from, just because of what schools we went to. Like, we didn't choose this, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, I absolutely want to go to Pittsburgh public schools and, not get a private education. Like, I've even had people in the military that I've had to have some words with, like, why would your parents let you go to that school if they were like shooting outside? I'm like, well, I'm sorry that my parents were in the working class and we couldn't afford a private school, you know what I mean? But we did the best we could. You know, I think we're both officers right now, so I don't know how far that got you, but so, you know what I mean? Like, you continue to fight that all the time. Like, I fight that to this day. I had a pretty intensive argument about how I shouldn't be the only one seeing Japanese patients because I'm an Asian female. And I'm like, what? I don't even speak Japanese. Like, I'm just another therapist on your books. Like, so you continue to see people like, oh, you're not doing great. I got like a really good promotion statement. Someone told me like, oh, that's nothing. Like, really? That's interesting because I'm going to promote. But again, you will see it throughout your career. You'll see it in college. You'll see it in high school. You'll see people just trying to drag you down because they don't want you to do well. But you have to keep pushing forward, like, and just be like, okay, like, you don't need to believe in me. I believe in me. And and I think that was, and people take it in different ways. I'm always like, oh, is that a challenge? Oh, you don't think I can do that? Watch me. Watch me. And watch me do it better than you. So, you know what I mean? Like, I take things like that as a challenge because you're not going to bring me down. You're not going to tell me I can't do something when I know I can, unless it's illegal. Okay, I'm not going to do that. But you know what I mean? Like, there's certain things where you're just like, no, like, I will do that. Like, okay, I might fail at something, but I'm going to get up and do something else to make it work. Right. So having that mentality, having people around you that have that mentality, you will lose a lot of friends, I will tell you. And it sounds super cliche when they're like, oh, it's lonely at the top. That's real. Because I had some really, really good friends, well, what I thought were good friends in high school, where I'm like, that's my ride or die, that's my right hand, wherever she goes, I go. No. Because when you start going down the road of like, oh, let me try this drug, let me do this, I'm like, probably not gonna do that. I can't afford that in my life. So, you know what I mean? You will lose some friends and it sucks, you know what I mean? It hurts. But it happens. And sometimes people will show you their true colors, and always take that. When someone shows you their true colors, don't ignore it. Oh, that was just that one time. No, that's deep down in them. So if you feel like somebody's holding you back or they're just not in your corner, they're really trying to sabotage you. So you need to let that go. Let's see. Who's that? Can you go see surgeries? Maybe. Go talk to Dale Fleck. I think he's still there.
I think Dale is still there, but they changed all of their HIPAA policies. It's so hard to get in UPMC now. It's very hard because when they changed the clearances and everything like that, I think the last person we had was probably Armani, about 4. She's out of school, so like 4 years ago. Yeah. Well, so we haven't been able to get in, but we are having a career, a healthcare career workshop virtually. But part of it is that we will get to see either some virtual surgeries or they'll take us to the operating room if COVID allows it next spring.
So we'll see. Suits. You get the little things for your feet. You put a little bunny suit on.
Yep. We used to go every year. Miss Mary used to take us every single year. And now it's like, Wiser, we can definitely go there. It's much better than it used to be. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, Wiser is pretty cool.
DJ needs to link with, or Michael needs to link with DJ.
You know what? DJ is on Broadway. So
DJ is doing all things right now.
You see him in the commercial?
No.
He's in the Oculus Go commercial. In that Oculus commercial, he's the first one sitting down. When the Oculus, the goggles, the virtual reality goggles, the guy that's sitting down with the goggles when it first comes on is him. If you go to YouTube, you'll see it. Because we tried to get him. Well, we had Alexis Payne, so she's a playwright at Yale and has done some things in New York and California. So she was on yesterday. So we got a couple connects, and then we have Mr. Jeremy's friend is a Broadway artist or performer, so he'll be on next month. So we're trying to connect as much as possible, especially virtually. I think our speakers are so much better
Yeah, Michael, you need to pick their brains, ask them for their numbers, their email. Be like, I need to know all things. All things.
Look, that's what we keep saying, ask questions. I know you all have questions. I know you have, it's like we're connected with this group now. So it's like, how can they get connected? Being shy ain't gonna do it. And I keep going back to Megan, and I remember she used to get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning and go to surgeries. This wasn't even on school to career time half the time. It was just, there's a surgery I want to see. And she lived on on Robinson, Michael. So she lived down the street from you. Her parents still live there.
My parents still live. I was just there.
Yeah. So she would get up and walk up to Montefiore Hospital, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd get to work and she'd be leaving. I'm like, where you been? She's going out here.
I want to say the coolest surgery I've seen. The weirdest one was an amputation. When they like take somebody's leg off, you're like, huh, he took it off. And then he set it next to me in a bio bag. And I'm like, oh, excuse me. I seen a heart transplant.
Were you in the gallery or were you actually down there in the operating room?
I was in the operating room.
In the
room. Let me tell you my first surgery, right? So I'm in there. It's like the first time I'm ever around. I'm like 15. So they're like, oh, come stand over here. I'm like, okay. Somebody's standing there and they're doing a bypass, a heart bypass. So they take a ligament out of the leg and they make sure like it's good to go through, and then they bypass the heart wherever like the clog is or whatever. I don't know all the terms now, I'm social worker. Anyways, but so the doctor is like testing to make sure the blood goes through all the way, there's no holes or anything. He squirts the blood at me. Like it doesn't hit me, but I'm like, oh, excuse me, sir, I don't think you're supposed to do that. He was just like, oh, I was just testing it, I want to see your skills. I was like, I don't know about this one. But that was super, like that was the first surgery I ever seen. I've seen open heart surgery. I've seen them do a heart transplant. And that's all about like how fast you can do it, because the heart is still beating that they took out of one body. And then they literally break the ribs and have to take one out and put one in really fast. So I was in the operating room. Like I knew all the different gases that they
How
gave.
was that possible though? Are you like, I didn't know people were actually allowed down there.
Yeah.
When school to career, when Megan was in school to career, everything was possible.
Yeah, we did all things.
We did everything. I don't even know if HIPAA was a thing.
But I took a little class in the auditorium.
Yeah, it wasn't serious, like now they're all serious about HIPAA and confidentiality. And I mean, she wasn't supposed to tell us all the stuff, but I'm like,
I didn't give you no names.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know who it was. It was just she had those opportunities that were incredible. And even up until, like I said, 4 years ago, our students were in that department, but they weren't able to do those types of surgeries or be.
I would just walk up to the board like, I want to see that one today. They're like, okay, have you seen this time? I'm like, I think I'll go to that one. I would just like, after the second year, I would just like put all the little gear on. I had the bunny suit, the gloves, and I would just walk in and walk over to the little operating room. They're like, this one? They're like, yeah, go ahead.
Times have drastically changed. Definitely. It is not the same. So I think, is it Raynell or Ranique? One of you all put in the chat. And look, we're going to leave. It's after 6 o'clock, guys. Raynell said, Miss Carla, you had some determined and smart S2C kids, LOL. We still do.
Get on the wagon. We all here.
Exactly. We still have some smart and determined students. It's just a matter. I mean, COVID stops a lot of things that School to Career does. I mean, it's, there's some things that we can do, but it also, we had some committed students, and I could say that has changed. Megan, it was like almost every day. If I didn't see Megan for 2 days, I was like, where's she at? I'm standing on the front.
Easy Mac.
Exactly. Like, yeah, like I said, we were in the community.
Us too. We were hungry all the time.
They are too. So but, yeah, exactly. And I mean, times were just different. We were in the community. And then it was just, I think the motivation was definitely stronger. Not saying our kids aren't, but it was like how School to Career connected with UPMC at that time, how we connected with Pitt. We had more opportunities. And now it's like with HIPAA, there a lot of the opportunities we had then were reserved or now for like college students in med school. So we can't
ask me what year in college I was. I'm like, oh, I'm 15.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I mean, so again, it's like you all came every day. I might see kids like once a week. And it's just like, how am I going to trust that you're going to take it, take this opportunity and, participate when I can't give you a small thing? How I can't give you a small thing and you do go through with it. How am I going to go to that next level and give you something that big? And then expect you to, sometimes the motivation or the determination is not there. And there's also, these kids have so much more to do. There is like 1,000 different things that are happening in the school. There was nothing happening in the school. We were it. So, it's like now they have community schools with all these different opportunities. And also School to Career didn't have competition. Now there's like 10 different other youth programs that do similar things.
Well, I was taking college courses 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
Yeah, it's true.
And my internship, and coming up there to eat and do my homework. And working at Rita's.
Yeah,
so I don't want to hear about y'all busy schedules, okay? I had a busy schedule.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Man.
Hey, I always say School to Career is what you make of it. If you come in and it's like, Miss Carla, this is what I want. I know like Michael and Nicoye, they wanted Steeltown. And that was like, okay, we're going to make this happen. And it took us a while to make it happen. And it's because there's so much turnover. I'm still here and I know about these opportunities, but the people that we used to work with, it's like they're just like dropping like flies. So it's like, okay, well, this person's not there anymore, or this person retired, or this person got fired, or they have no funding.
Right.
So it's constantly reinventing these connections and these relationships with mentors. But I always say, instead of standing up at my desk saying, I want to do something different or I don't like it, it's like, did you really try? Are you asking questions and are you really participating to see what's next? Because our mentors now, they're like, I could tell this kid don't want to be here.
Right.
So why am I going to give them additional responsibility when?
Right. So what I will tell y'all, and I've had to learn this I'm usually pretty good at like picking stuff up, but even through the military, take the opportunities that are presented to you. They might not always be the best. You're like, man, I don't want to do that. Like, that's dumb. Like, but you never know. It's really about who you know and where you can go with it. Because I've done things like, so for instance, we have this huge ball. It's called the Air Force Ball. I have no desire to go to this horse and pony show, right? Yep. They chose me to be the POC this year, which was hell. Like, it was COVID, and they wanted me to pull off this big like event. Worst thing ever. I was just like, oh my gosh, I just want to get this done. But I did it because they asked me to do it, because they knew they could rely on me, right? So even the little things that you don't want to do, be like, all right, let's just get this over. Even if it's just a checkbox, cool, just get it done. And then they know that they can come to you with other things, right? So I joke about this because I typically, on my day-to-day life, my personal life, I'm always on CP time. Just know that I'm going to be an hour or two late. But when I'm doing something for work, when it's a meeting, when it's, something important, something that needs to be on time, be 10, 15 minutes early. Yep. I used to be like 15, 20 minutes early to breach mentors just to go play on the computer, but I was there. You know what I mean? Like things, because people will judge you off of that. You know how I told you, like people are always trying to pull you back. People are like, oh no, not that person. Oh, they can't do this. That will set the precedence of how much you actually want something. If you're there and you're engaged and you're really trying to do it, people will see that, you know what I mean? So even if it's a little strenuous, like you guys will probably think I'm crazy as ever right now, but I literally wake up at 4:30 in the morning so I can go work out by 5, be done by 6 to get to work at 7. So work doesn't start till 7:30, but I need my peace of mind before I go into therapy. But the people see that. They see that I want to be there. They see that, things are getting done. I do things a certain way. And they know that they can rely on me to do other things. Sometimes it's bad because they give me so much stuff. They're like, oh, we know you can do this. I'm like, that's great, but I got too much on my plate right now. So knowing when you can and when you can't, but also getting outside your comfort zone sometimes and doing some things that you don't want to do because you know it'll be better for the future. Like, look at the tunnel, like look at the bright side, look at, you know what I mean, where it's leading you. Where is this going to help me? Am I going to know these people? Like, networking is a huge thing. Am I going to know this person? Like, literally, I'm in so many programs right now that if I need something on my base, like I have to go get a COVID test. I'm like, man, I don't even know who I'm supposed to call. I call my friend, like, hey man, she's public health. Where am I supposed to do this? What am I supposed to do that? Oh, call this person. Okay, I called that person. Just networking and knowing people that you need. You know what I mean? You might not want to be around them. You might not, you know, you don't jive personally, but don't burn bridges that you don't need to. And do the things that you need to do that will set you aside from the rest. And that's how people really recognize you and take you to that next level. Because I can't tell you how many opportunities I've got just because I've sat down and had a conversation with somebody, just because I took a project that nobody else wanted. You know what I mean? And just little things, you know, coming to Miss Carr, like, hey, what do you need for the program? Can I help you for this? Can I help you for that? I loved tutoring when I was there. When I was still at Pitt, the whole time I was at Pitt, I would come back and tutor kids. And I can tell you, that's one of those things, like, that is genuinely what I love to do. I will come back and mentor. I will come back and tell you my struggles. I will come back and try to help you through your struggles. As long as you tell me what they are. Don't lie to me about them. Because I'm like, that doesn't sound right. What did you do? I do this with my nieces and nephews all the time. Like, they just failed me. Yeah, Megan, like, let me go talk to your teacher. No, you don't want to do that. Yes, I do. So I'm here to help you, but I'm also going to check you to make sure you're doing what you need to do, being in the places that you need to be, and pushing forward as you should. So I'm here. Even if you guys need tutors, please download the world clock and look at Tokyo time before you call me. More than likely I'll answer. I'm up very early in the morning, but I'll help tutor you if you just need to talk, if you just need a mentor. I'll give, Miss Carla has all my information. You can call me, text me. I'm here to help you. Just make sure you're doing what you need to do for me to help you.
Right.